Coming up on this episode of Common Denominator.
And so a lot of people think it's going to take like years to learn how to break free from anxiety or learn how to get back on track or get their head in the game, whatever. And it doesn't. It can happen very quickly.
Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator, where we shine a light on people striving to make the world a better place. Today, expert strategies to help you relieve anxiety. Dan Candell is known worldwide as the anxiety relief guy, and that's because he's helped tens of thousands of people overcome anxiety through hypnosis and by tapping into the power of their inner mind. If you're in need of stress relief, this episode is for you. So Dan and I just finished our conversation, and the thing that really sticks out in my mind is how quickly his program can actually decompress or release stress and anxiety in just a matter of minutes. Really amazing. Before we play my chat with Dan, a quick reminder that if you like the show, please subscribe and follow me on social media at Popack. Now, here's my conversation with anxiety relief expert Dan Candell. Enjoy. Hi, Dan, and welcome to Common Denominator.
Thanks, Moshe. Hey, it's great to be here. I'm so happy and excited. Let's get this party up. Let's get this carnival-like atmosphere going.
There you go, right? So let's go to the core, stress and anxiety. Us as humans going through the world, what are the main sources of stress and anxiety?
So I always like to joke that anxiety is like death and taxes. It's unavoidable, right? And for most people, I guess, if you're a good tax-paying citizen, the most common sources actually are the top three are death and dying, divorce, and moving, and obviously other people dying, not you. Right. But those three are the biggest stressors, and then there are other ones that people don't think about so often, which are like caretaking. And that's where I talk a lot about being a caretaker, because I was a caretaker of my dad for a couple of years before he passed, and he passed a little less than a year ago. And so I started diving deep into entrepreneurs who were caretakers for family members, because that was a big source of like my stress and anxiety as well. And I had to get my own poop in a group, which is a clinical term for like get your stuff together. And in order to work with him, and in order to help him have as much of a peaceful transition as possible. So there are all sources of stress and anxiety that are coming at us constantly. And especially now, I joke, like, I will never go broke, because everybody experiences stress and anxiety usually on a daily level.
What would you say the key difference between stress and anxiety? Is it interchangeable, or is there a difference there?
So for some people it's interchangeable. Stress can be more of a look at it like situational stress. Like there's something that is stressing you out. It is more of a temporary feeling, where anxiety is more deeply rooted. And anxiety comes up when, and the main source of anxiety, the main reason why we have anxiety is to avoid, to keep us safe. Stress doesn't necessarily keep us safe, but it can be a motivator to help us complete a task, or a motivator to help us get started. Whereas anxiety is the exact opposite. Anxiety can make us avoid things that we should really be able to enjoy. So anxiety is what becomes limiting. But if people stay too long inside stress can very easily become anxiety. And then people will start avoiding things like work. That's where people will procrastinate more. And that's also where anxiety and being chronically stressed out, it makes us stupid. And it's really difficult to function and to think clearly when you're so stressed out all the time.
And because it seems like kind of stress is like what's currently going on. Anxiety is maybe more, it seems like a little more the future, like more worrying about what's gonna be type thing.
Right. All anxiety is anticipatory anxiety. You're anticipating having an anxiety attack, or anticipating feeling a certain way going into a certain situation. And there was someone I heard say all anxiety relates to separation anxiety, going back to when we were very young and our parents leaving and not knowing when they would come back, and it would cause great anxiety. But even that's anticipatory anxiety because we're anticipating our parents not returning. So even separation anxiety is anticipatory anxiety.
Yeah, it's amazing because when I think about in reality, and it's easy to say it, but then to do it on a daily basis, the past, right? What we worry about, think about in the past, how much of therapy is about the past. And the past, no matter what any human does, you don't have a time machine. You cannot go back and change the past. And then when it comes to anticipatory, the future, nobody knows what's going to be in the future.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, ideally, right, I always think about it's being here in the present. And this regarding kind of like stress and anxiety, physically, mentally, what ailments, what things actually happen to the human that suffer too much stress, too much anxiety?
So stress is like a silent killer. And you look at it, and IBS is a really popular symptom or side effect of chronic stress or anxiety. And then it affects your digestive system. It affects stomach issues as well. Hypertension, heart disease. A lot of people who are chronically stressed out, it's like they have high blood pressure. Also affects diet. Also what we call TMBs, or too much behaviors, where there are anxious habits. So one of the common ones is like nail biting, or like sucking on your I know this sounds weird, but like sucking on your lip is another common one.
I've seen that from people. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. There's really interesting ones where it manifests differently for each person, but some of the main typical ones are too many video games, too much social media, too much porn, too much games on phone, spending too much, because these are all distractions that give you a temporary feeling of relief and release instead of participating in a behavior that gives you a sense of real relief, release, and also a sense of purpose as well. So it's not just like fine-tuning your mind, it's also fine-tuning some of the strategies of how you're doing things in your life and also what you're doing with that time as well.
So I think when I think about certain, like adults have all different types of addictions, and it could be some like good addictions or bad addictions, but I always think it's like, why do we have these addictions? It's to negate some sort of trauma, maybe, right?
Usually, yep. And I'm getting my master's and then my doctorate, and a lot of the research that I do is specifically with addictive behaviors. Now, I don't work with chronic, like drug addiction and alcohol addiction. I don't work with that because then there's a chemical dependency. Excuse me. And I don't work with chemical dependencies because there can be a lot of resistance there. Yet I'm working with like the psychological habits, the psychological side effects, ramifications of anxiety, of being way overly stressed. Some of the other common ones are like procrastination, and people think, oh, that person procrastinates or that person's disorganized, they're lazy or they're scattered. That's not necessarily it. Most procrastination, most disorder goes into anxiety. And if you think about it, people who are like business professionals or business owners, we're really good at solving problems on the outside. And like Moshe, I could probably give you half the world's problems and you can solve them by like Friday at noon. And yet on the inside, we're like an anxious ball of twine, and we have a lot of internal conflict and chaos. And we aren't good at solving the problems that we have inside. And that's where I step in and I help people solve those problems. And also, you're exactly right. Like, we can't change what happened in the past, but we can change our perception of it and how it affects us or doesn't affect us. And there's like a 60-second technique that I teach people that if you're having any like destructive thought, or if you're having a really uncomfortable memory, or a memory pops up, or like post-traumatic stress, there's a 60-second technique I teach people that, like, boom, just like that, it deconstructs it and it changes your perception within about 60 seconds.
I guess they call that kind of like reframing, right? It's like,
yes, a lot of it's reframing. I call it neurocognitive restructuring, because that's what we do. We're reconstructing the way a person thinks, feels, responds, and behaves in situations. And part of the methodology, I am using a little bit of hypnosis, but not in like a traditional sense. I use a lot of hypnotic techniques and a lot of hypnotic strategies as well to teach people how to break those unconscious patterns, or those unconscious programs that are holding, excuse me, sorry about that. They're holding them back. People that are feeling like stuck. And those unconscious patterns and programs, what happens, they become so, we don't even have to put any effort into doing them. They just start happening. And that's where it starts to affect us on in relationships, personally, professionally, friendships. That's where we go into avoidance behavior and stuff like that.
It's interesting because I do know a lot of CEOs and people that are outwardly making a lot of impact, and then their personal lives, they need, many of them, they need someone to help manage themselves. Right. I know that I have to have certain practices myself every single day to make sure, that, self-care and taking care, certain things, so I can be there for other people and I can produce. So, but healthy habits and rituals, I guess you want to call it that.
Right. Yeah. And that's what it is. It's not just like when we were joking earlier about different sports teams, right? And just like an athlete most of them have pre-game routines and pre-game rituals, and also post-game routines and rituals. We as professionals we should do the same thing, where we have like these pre-routines that we incorporate into our day, or even before we get up in the day, how to kind of reprogram our minds so that way it works for us instead of against us. And also routines to wind down. One of the big misconceptions, though, is people think that the routines have to take like hours, or they have to take 45 minutes, and they don't. A routine could take about 60 seconds to 5 minutes and be enough to set you up for success for the day. And then to wind down, a routine could be 5 or 10 minutes that you're doing to wind down from the day, just to deprogram yourself from any stress or any anxiety or any uncomfortable moments or worry that could keep you up at night.
And I know before the show you were telling me kind of you got into the hypnosis space at, I think it was 13, you were saying.
Yeah.
And I always found it fascinating. I'm a layperson when it comes to hypnosis,
yep.
but I think that if you can even self-hypnotize, just, again, and we'll get into this, to do good production in this world, maybe that's a good thing compared to not good. But, so what is that, when someone has stress and anxiety, what is your process for a client?
So one of the first things I do, and I have so many people that reach out to me. I barely work with people one-on-one anymore. I'm mainly doing group work. And so I have like this group coaching program that I do. And the first step is I reframe or re-educate about what stress and anxiety is and how we're going to manage it and how we're going to break free from it. A lot of people are trained by now I'm a fan of therapy. A lot of people say, Dan, you're anti-therapy. I'm not. I'm a fan of therapy. I have a therapist that I talk to every other week and just kind of like unload with things if I need to. But this is not therapy, because it's not a place where you necessarily unload. This is a place where we work through very quickly. And so a lot of people think it's going to take like years to learn how to break free from anxiety or learn how to get back on track or get their head in the game, whatever. And it doesn't. It can happen very quickly. So the first thing I'm doing is re-educating. The second thing I'm doing is I'm helping people what we call clear the underlying emotional core of the issue. So the reason why people are so stressed out or anxious is because there are all these emotional cores that have been caused from past traumas, uncomfortable events or times or situations that we might be aware or completely unaware of on a mental level. So I help people clear those underlying emotional cores using all these methods from hypnosis, energy, psychology, thought field therapy. And then we work on the high performance stuff as well. So it's this whole systematic way of bringing a person from here to here. And then, while people are in my group, if they do need a private session, I'll make time and space available for them. But the private sessions are only about like 20 to 30 minutes at that point, because people are then acclimated to my process. They'll meet during my office hours and I'll say like, hey, what's going on? Someone last week said, I have a fear of flying. I have to get on a flight tomorrow at 1. I'm terrified. I ran them through this quick process. It took 15 minutes. The guy sent me a picture afterwards after he landed. He said that was the most peaceful flight I ever had. In 15 minutes, we deconstructed his fear of flying.
Wow. So yeah, I definitely, it's interesting since I was in New York in September 11 and I fly a lot. So I would love to be the person, second the flight is about to take off, I pass out and wake up afterwards, but I'm not that person. So I have my music and I have my system, but that definitely is a value add. I would definitely, love to, to know more about that. But what is the hypnosis part or self-hypnosis? What does that actually look like? What is that with your...
So there's 2 pieces to hypnosis. There's stage hypnosis, which I do, which is the comedy side. And that's where you hypnotize people on stage, have them think that they're conducting an orchestra. Excuse me. You have them think that they won like $10 million and they're talking to their favorite celebrity and stuff. That's the comedy side of hypnosis. And then we have the clinical or therapeutic side. You can hypnotize somebody in 2 ways. Number 1 is through overload. Or confusion, where you overload the nervous system. So I could do that by saying something like this. Now I'm gonna do this not to you. I'm just gonna talk about it, but you're gonna go into this little moment where you're gonna go, what the F did he just say? And it's something like this where I'm overloading a client. I'll say, as you're talking to me and you realize that the things we're going to be talking about are going to be getting into the subconscious part of the mind, which is the part of your mind that stores every single thing you've ever heard, seen, felt, and experienced, learned, read, and smelled, and tasted. It's going to change the way you think, respond, behave, because today is Monday, which is Tuesday's yesterday, and Sunday's tomorrow. And as you begin to process that and what that means, other thoughts might come into your head, which might be like the color orange, which is my favorite color as a child, which is not just a color, it's also a fruit. I wonder if there are other fruits that are also colors. As you begin to relax a little bit more with the things that used to bother you no longer do like they did before, as we sever ties with the things that used to bother you today. So
right.
You're like, what the,
Yeah. Overload.
So that's taking advantage of those like organic, I'll call them trances. Another way is to relax the nervous system, where I'll actually bring you through like a nice, like 3-4 minute relaxing process. And then there's also conversational hypnosis, which is where I'll ask you questions, what we call insight or discovery questions. And you'll have these moments where, Moshe, you'll be like, and you'll just kind of look up, your jaw will drop down, and that's an organic trance. Now we can create this so you can hypnotize yourself by looking up as if you're like looking up through your head, like at the top of the ceiling. And then you just blink slowly, like you close your eyes slowly, close your eye, and you open your eyes slowly. You do that 10 times. That will put you into a receptive state. And then it's basically a state where you can increase your focus. So what you focus on will be more likely to happen. So let's say you wanted more of like a millionaire mindset. And I'd say, okay, who's someone that you view as like a multimillionaire? And someone that I go to is Russell Brunson, the creator of ClickFunnels, which is this multi-million or billion-dollar software that helps you create marketing funnels. Oprah is another one that people go to as well. And you'll close your eyes and imagine Oprah standing there in front of you, and you'll float into Oprah and you start literally thinking how you perceive Oprah would think, or Tony Robbins, or whoever you want to choose. And that's a hypnotic pattern. And then you float those realities back into you, and then you start thinking more like they would think. This is what we call the new behavior generator. So if there's something that you feel uncomfortable about, you do this a little mental exercise where, like I said, you look up and then you blink 10 times, open and close your eyes. And when you get after the last time, you keep your eyes closed. You imagine a person out in front of you who would solve the problem a lot easier than you would solve the problem. And you float into them, you imagine them solving the problem, then you just float that into yourself, and it starts to rewire your perception, and it changes the way you think, which changes the way you feel, which changes the way you behave and respond.
I think that's tremendous. I mean, imagine we can do that on a compounding level, right? And the amount of positive output on society. I think it would be
Right.
tremendous. I know for most, we have 10 children, and for most of them, my wife would use hypnobirthing. And,
Yes. Yep.
Right. And it would be the craziest thing for me. So the first birth, and I'm thinking, okay, she's going to be yelling and screaming, but she was kind of like in this hypnotic state. And then for all the children, and it was unbelievable to actually watch that. It was amazing. I had another doctor on the show the other day, and we were talking about the benefits of healthy food and diet. How does that play into stress and anxiety?
Huge. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you brought this up. So, Moshe, I was on this cooking show one time, this like cooking talk show where we prepared meals that are clinically proven to reduce anxiety. Foods like bananas, avocados, it'll help you. Blueberries in massive quantities, though. So there's like actually a blueberry concentrate pill you can take. It's like a supplement. But there are foods that can actually reduce your anxiety levels. Now, that's not going to solve trauma, right? It's not going to solve your fear of flying, but not you, but the person who has a fear of flying. It's not going to like cure you of the fear of flying, but it's just going to help you reduce general stress and anxiety levels. Diet and exercise, again, is so important because it can help you do something with purpose, and it makes you feel better about yourself. It gets the endorphins rushing and flowing. But a lot of anxious people actually avoid exercise because it makes their heart race. Mm-hmm. And what happens is our brain forms this connection with our body, and it says every time your heart beats, it's the same thing as having a panic attack. So a person often people with anxiety won't exercise or do anything that makes their heart beat fast. So diet, though, is really important because it gives you something to work towards, and it helps you feel better about yourself. So it helps you feel more confident, more open, more expressive when we're in better shape. And this happened to me about 5 years ago. I went for a physical. The doctors called me back and they said, where are you? I was on tour at the time. I was in Virginia. They said, you need to come back. I said, why? They said, we think you have leukemia. So I didn't, but it took like I had to go to the oncologist, the hematologist. I had to have all this testing done. And I made a deal with myself. I said, if I don't have leukemia, I'm going to hire a personal trainer. I'm going to become shredded. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to eat healthy. And dude, for the past 5 years, I've been working with this guy, and he's a celebrity personal trainer. I got in with him because his sister worked for me, and she was a therapist for me. She said, oh, my brother does that. And I just went on this like quest for health. And I had panic attacks. I was feeling really anxious, and it helped me so much. But it's like the trifecta, right? It's not just about that. It's also about the mental side. It's also about the strategic side. It's not just what happens on the outside. It's also what happens on the inside.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to the Common Denominator podcast. My guest is Dan Candell, a.k.a. the Anxiety Relief Guy. Next week, we're re-airing one of our most popular episodes, my conversation with Candy Valentino. Candy is a powerhouse in the worlds of business leadership, finance, and investing. She has over 22 years in real estate investing and over 24 years in scaling, acquiring, and exiting businesses. And she has expert strategies to help you achieve financial freedom and thrive as an entrepreneur. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Now, back to the show. So one of the areas of like anxiety, I know it's like, I say one of the biggest stressors is like public speaking, but also I think just day to day, like social anxiety. You come into a place, right? And I think the world would be just a much better place because we are, connected beings. If you can see a complete stranger and not have that social anxiety. Any tips for that?
100%. So on a strategic way, there is something called matching and mirroring, which is a term from neurolinguistics programming, which is observe a person's behavior and communication style and match their communication style. So if they talk with their hands, you talk with your hands too, but you don't mimic them. We kind of match them. This happened to me this morning where somebody called me and they were like, "Hey, Dan, I'm just, I'm really in a bad place right now." And it would be totally incongruent and shocking to that person if I go, "Okay, well, I'm going to help you out of that bad place. Let's go." That would just like totally turn a person off. So it's matching their communication styles. Now I teach people this who have social anxiety, and it's important because then it's going to give that person who has social anxiety more confidence that they can hack into a person's mind without another person knowing it. Because then it fires off mirror neurons, and the person that you're communicating with all of a sudden feels more relaxed and feels more connected to you. And that's going to help the conversation flow much better. I wrote a book about this called The Hypnotic Connection, and it helps you it helps you form a better connection with people through communicating with them in more subtle ways. So that's one of the ways I help people with social anxiety is more tactical. Then it's a psychological perspective, like I said, of teaching them certain anchoring techniques, how to mentally prepare yourself to go into a social situation or to give a speech. One of the people I worked with, he had performance anxiety, social anxiety. After just 1 or 2 sessions, he went and gave a speech to 2,000 people and kicked ass. Like this guy rocked it. So again, it's more about like the tactical side. It's also about what happens inside as well.
Yeah, because I know, in general, like the social anxiety that people have, it's tremendously debilitating. For everywhere I've seen. What would you say, kind of moving forward, ways to avoid in the first place stress and anxiety?
Absolutely. It's to practice what we call natural calming states, and where it's more about emotional control. So one of the ways to avoid chronic stress and anxiety is to become more emotionally intuitive and to say, okay, I'm feeling something right now. Instead of just saying, "Oh, I'm feeling anxious." What is it really? And like this morning, I called my brother, and now a person with anxiety would say, "Oh, this person gives me anxiety." No, this person frustrates me. Like my brother, I love my brother, but he pisses me off sometimes. So instead of lumping everything under anxiety, just start to label those emotions with more clarity and say, okay, this isn't anxiety. This is frustration, or this is doubt, or I didn't sleep well last night. So this is fatigue. Doing that can really prevent you from going down that rabbit hole of being chronically anxious. The other way is, like I said, to practice naturally calming techniques, which you've seen me do this a couple of times, which is a form of bilateral stimulation. So whenever you notice yourself escalating in a way that is going to cause you to feel overly anxious, you can shift into something that's going to help you feel more naturally calm. Bilateral stimulation, or doing something where you're activating both sides of your body, is a great way to do this. And one of the things I teach, this is like step 1, I teach to a lot of my clients, is whenever you notice yourself feeling anxious, pass something back and forth like this, slowly, or roll a pen between your hands like this and kind of go back and forth like this. And this is just it's going to like zen you out. So practicing those like little mind hacks can actually prevent you from being overly stressed or overly anxious to the point where you'll start, so that way you don't start avoiding things.
I'll tell you, I was just thinking about what you were saying before about communication. And I said this before on the show, and I wonder why in society we don't teach that, but it's only 7% of communication is words. The other 93, right, is tone and body language. So it's like, right? So it's like matching it, because you could say whatever you want, and if you're in the I place and you're not looking and seeing where the other person is, they probably didn't hear a word you said.
Exactly.
Meaning internalize what you said.
Right. And now, Moshe, the reason why I'm not, so you're sitting, so for the people who are watching this, Moshe is sitting like very relaxed right now, like very cash in the studio, kind of off to the side. And the reason why I'm not like that right now is because just the producers wanted me more center, and which I guess I could be more center and still, still kind of sit like that. But usually I would be matching how you're sitting, because it's not just going to help you feel more relaxed, dude. It's going to help me feel more relaxed too, because I'm doing what you're doing. And then we have a more organic flowing connection.
Yeah, that's
and this is what therapists should use. It's what a lot of experienced salespeople use as well. Anybody that needs to form this good flowing connection, these are the things that are really important to know.
And I know you do that, you teach business and sales, right?
Yes.
The art of hypnotic persuasion.
Yes.
So that's
how to hypnotically persuade your way out of a paper bag. Yes.
Right. So it's basically, worst case scenario, someone's at the word no. So, right. So then you just have to figure out what they're really saying and how hopefully you can get them to maybe, and then yes.
Right. And there's this whole thing in sales, right, which is objections. And this is why a lot of salespeople, they don't do more because they're afraid of getting told no. And I tell the way I train people is, well, what if no wasn't really an option? What if the people who would say no aren't going on those calls? So that way I set it up so people are going to get the people who are, I would say, like 75% more likely to say yes. And it's setting up some systems in place. Like, for example, I didn't do this with you. Many times I would do this when I'm doing an interview where I send a personalized video to the person. I'd say like, hey, Moshe, I'm so excited to be on this interview with you today. And forgive me for not doing that with you, Moshe.
That's okay.
And again, it's just a way to like get that connection going. And like I have calls tomorrow with people who are going to go into my program. And one of the things I do is I just send them a personalized video, and I have this little video software. It sends them a personalized video. It gets sent right to their email, and their name is written on a piece of paper so they can see it's made specifically for them. And I'm like, hey, Pete, Dan here. I'm just really excited about talking to you tomorrow. And that way it increases engagement on those calls as well to make sure people are actively participating.
Yeah, and I think that we are emotional beings. If someone takes the time, and I know when I receive it and when I give it out, handwritten note, I send it to somebody, it creates a memory and an emotion where, or like you do, like these videos, it really makes a difference. But I know you also just came out with a book, 5-Minute Stress Relief. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. And tell us about the kind of the points that stick out in your mind.
Definitely. So most of the people I work with are busy business professionals and entrepreneurs. These are people that don't have time to go to therapy. They're people that they don't have years to overcome their problems. And they're also people where they have more at stake. Like they have team members, they have families to support, they have employees, and they have clients. So if they're not performing their best, then they have a lot more at stake that they can potentially lose. So I go deep into, like we were talking about, naturally calming ways to reduce stress and to solve problems for people on a deep psychological level. So that way people can more solve those internal conflicts that they have on the inside, so they're not spilling over into other areas of their life. I spend the first half of the book on re-educating and reframing, and then adopting principles and just ways to think that can help a person out. And also, I'm a big fan of saying have to, choose to, get to. And the reason why so many people are stuck in this state of constant stress and worry is because many of us are in this constant state of, I have to do this, I have to do this. Well, humans don't want to be told what they have to do, or they don't want to feel like they have to do something. So it's identifying some of the things that you have to do and how to work through those, so you get to do more of what you choose to do, so you can do more of what you get to do or feel like you get to do. And then I go into some psychological techniques as well, like what I call the emotional shatter or emotional breakthrough, which is you take any uncomfortable feeling or emotion, you kind of make a picture out of it, You imagine it is like a puzzle, and then you imagine just the puzzle like exploding into 1,000 pieces. And what that does, it psychologically minimizes your reaction or response to an uncomfortable memory, or just an uncomfortable thought, or even like the thought or idea of, I'm going into a meeting and this meeting might be a little stressful. So things like that. I talk a lot about how to solve a lot of the problems that are stressing business professionals and entrepreneurs out. But it's not something like, oh, refine your email list. It's something like, do this in your head so that you can make more peace with yourself.
And I think, especially nowadays, with technology, with AI, and how much capitalism and things have grown, I don't know if we are conditioned as humans to be leaders in businesses. So any tools and tips and tricks for sustainability, that's definitely a value add. So thank you for that.
Right. Absolutely.
And what is something that you're grateful for?
See, I love this question. I have this quote that I put a lot of gratitude into, and certain people I put gratitude into, and it's Zig Ziglar. And Zig Ziglar said, you can get what you want by helping other people get what they want. And I'm going to add to that. It's more impactful if it's in an altruistic way. So you do so in an act of giving and of service and not really expecting anything back. And I'm grateful for these little, like, I'll call them like brain nuggets. And I pick these up all the time. And I have this notebook that I write down like all these little quotes or isms, and they help me and they help me help other people.
Amazing. And what's something about you that that people don't know?
So I actually don't talk about this. I grew up on a farm, and the reason why I grew up on a farm, and this is something like I haven't been that open about. I'll talk about it privately sometimes, but I haven't been that open about it. I grew up on a farm in Candell, upstate New York, and it taught me a lot of character, value, a lot of values, how to be like a good, hardworking human being. And the reason why my parents did that was because my brother was struggling with heroin addiction and my mom was struggling with alcoholism. And as well as my uncle was struggling with severe alcoholism. My parents wanted me to be removed from that. And even though I still saw what was going on, and because there was, in certain situations, not in my situation, but in other facets of my family, there was a lot of sexual abuse. And my family wanted to get me out of that. And so they put me onto this farm, and I went there every weekend. I went there every holiday. I went there on every school vacation, and I worked on the farm, and that taught me so much about life. It taught me a lot about death. It also taught me how to be an adult and just to have responsibilities.
I love that you're saying that. We recently purchased a farm a little over a year ago, and we have some chickens, goats, horses, and fruits, veggies. And I watch my kids in nature with nothing. They put down the electronics, and they're out there, and it's the most healing thing in the world, honestly.
It is.
And I also want to let you know that there hasn't been a single person that I've interviewed, people that I've met, every single person that's making impact in the world has their story. It's impossible to not have whether it starts childhood, teenager years, things like that. So congratulations on, I guess, putting one foot in front of the other. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate that. That means a lot. And like I said, especially the sexual abuse thing, I don't think I ever talked about that on an interview ever before. And I do a lot of interviews. And there's a lot of people that are affected by it. And I was just talking to someone about this at an event not too long ago. And you look at two people who've been through something very similar, and one person it will make them, and the other person it will break them. And that's why I have this compass tattoo on my arm, and it says we choose our own direction, because I really feel if I didn't see the things I saw when I was growing up, if I didn't have those experiences of my family members, and that's why I'm also grateful for that, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today.
Completely.
And I'm more statistically likely to be an addict because of the addiction that was in my family. And I just, seeing this growing up, I realized we choose our direction.
Yeah.
It's not chosen for us.
It's a friend of mine. He was abused as a child, and he told me he just went to a. We don't realize how prevalent it is.
Right.
He would go to. He had an organization that he helped people of abuse, and he told me, just at one wedding, people in the community, 7, 8 people would come. Me, my sister, my child. It is, last stat I saw, people under 18 worldwide is about 40 million children. 40 million children that are human trafficked. 40 million.
Yep.
I think people ask me, like, what would be the one thing? What's the one thing? Having 10 children, what is that one thing? It is stopping people under 18, children, from being abused.
Yeah.
I think of, beyond, it's like food and that. Like those are that's the thing that doesn't make any sense in this world. That.
Yeah.
So stay strong, and
Thank you.
how can people learn more about you, follow you on social, get your book? How can they do that then?
Best thing that you can do is go to my website, which is dancandell.com. And if you do want to follow me on my socials, go to dancandell.com/follow me. And I have over 250,000 people on TikTok, over 21,000 on Instagram. So all my socials are on there. There's also a link to get the book as well. And links to some of my other courses for anxiety relief, stress relief, confidence building, focus improvement, and everything like that. And there is one thing I do say at the end of every interview, and I don't know when the end is going to be, so I just want to say this now, and that is be well, do good, and be true to who you are.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dan. Really,
Absolutely.
It's been great. Really been great.
Moshe, it was a pleasure. It was an absolute pleasure.
Keep pushing it forward. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Dan Candell. Next week, I speak with Candy Valentino. Candy's an acclaimed speaker and accomplished author and the host of the podcast, Generation Wealth. She has over 22 years in real estate investing and over 24 years in scaling, acquiring, and exiting businesses. She has expert strategies to help you exponentially grow your wealth. Please subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode, and follow me on social media at @Popack. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.